The reason for the delay was mainly because the realtor were quoting them an extremely optimistic price of don't fall in love with your own purchases because they're so scared of missing out the future gain, but they're not realizing that by holding on to it, they're actually hurting themselves in the long run. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in the past, we've always made videos on buying properties, what's the market looking like. I thought for this week, we're going to do something opposite and talk about selling properties. Now, many people have the concept that because real estate does go up over a long period of time, they should hold on to them no matter what for as long as possible for that maximum gain. This is actually not the case. So for this week, I wanted to go over two different client cases that we just went through dealing with the investment properties. What kind of rationale we went through to arrive at the decision of selling, and what happens after selling, how to calculate the tax, and finally what we can take away from these two experiences. Now, before we start, make sure you comment, like, and also share this video if you find it useful. And also join us on our free private Facebook group where we have close to 5,000 members. Alright, without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So for the first client, their background is they are a middle-aged family. They're about 15 years away from their retirement timeline. And during February 2021, they were eyeing an investment property out in Mission, BC. Now, at that time, we did some math, and it looks like it's going to work out according to their plan. Now, the purchase price was $630,000 in the end. Rental income is around $3,065, and this property was funded by $140,000 of the original home equity line of credit, plus another $490K of mortgage on top. Now, fast forward to the end of 2021 during December, the conversation on what to do with this property popped up again. And one of the major talking points was that, according to the realtor, the property value have appreciated a lot, and he was quoting the client around $900,000, which was close to a 50% appreciation in just 10 months. However, we're going to come back to this number later on because my client and I both felt that this number is a little bit too optimistic, even given the crazy FOMO market that we have been experiencing at that time. But another issue that we had with the house was that it is relatively old and fixes needs to be happen probably in the next 2 to 5 years. So what we did, as you can see on the screen, is we did a comparison of if you were to hold it versus if we were to sell it right now. We visited the potential cost and capital gain that we would have paid at $900K sale price, and it worked out to be a net proceed of $171,000, which we can in turn take this amount, pay towards their original mortgage, pretty much pay off the whole thing, which can set themselves up nicely going towards retirement. Now, on the other hand, we also looked at if we were to keep it. Taking away all the costs, we would have a slight net negative cash flow. We can pretty much just call it break even at this point. Now, I do understand that principal payment is not part of a cost. It's actually a saving that you're simply putting towards the house. However, for this client, the main concern is how much money they actually have to take out of their pocket to fund this property if they were to keep it. So we just left it at the net cash flow. So you can see that while the net cash flow is kind of break even, so it's acceptable, the upcoming fixes are not. We listed out a bunch of things that potentially requires a fix within the next 1 to 5 years. And you can see that due to property age, the fixes are quite hefty. Plus the fact that the reno involves plumbing, which replaces pipes, we probably will be losing tenants for multiple months, so we will be losing rent as well. At $3K rent a month, 3 months without tenants would be about $10K revenue that we lost. So taking into effect our estimated renovation cost plus the loss of revenue, it's gonna roughly cost us about $60,000 at the end. And also the cost of $50K and 3 months timeline is just a very conservative and rough estimation that we got from the renovation company. With everything that was going on at that time, labor shortage, supply, shock, who knows, it could have very well cost $75K or even $100K by the end. It may take way more than 3 months. There has been a lot of story where contractors are not finishing their work or they delaying upwards to 9 and 12 months. So at this point of discussion, my question for client is basically that if we know the fix is going to happen sooner and later and it's going to cost us at least $60K for the whole project, if we can sell at, let's say, $900K now, do we think after all the fixes, we can sell it at $960K or more? So our answer is probably not, and also during that time, as we all know, the market is extremely hot, so it's a very overheated market, so we're probably gonna be able to sell it at a premium, whereas if we keep waiting another 6-12 months, we may not be able to repeat the same sale price. So at the end, we decided it is better to let it go and sell it. Now, let's talk about the end result. So from the time that we decided it's good to sell around December, they actually weren't able to sell it all the way until June of this year. The reason for the delay was mainly because, like we were saying, the realtor were quoting them an extremely optimistic price of 900k plus, which got no offer and wasted a lot of time until the client themselves asked him to lower it back down to about 700k-ish. So at the end, the sale price is $760,000. We met again once the sale was done and we looked at the potential cap gain together, as you can see on the screen. Now here, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but what I want you to pay attention to is any cost that you weren't able to claim into your rental income should go towards increasing your ACB of your property, so you pay less capital gain taxes. For example, these are things like big renovations, property transfer tax that you pay initially, lawyer fees both when you bought the property and you sold the properties, and any other such cost. Which is why it's also very important for you to keep a clear record of all the costs that you have paid the day you own the property. Now, because this property is owned half and half by both spouses, we can basically split everything in half and calculate our cap gain that way. And also make sure you add the current income that you're generating on the side, plus any rental income that you may generate. So from there, we got a rough estimation of cash on hand. At the end, it's about 80k. So what we do at the end with the 80k is, because of the risk tolerance, we decided to take the amount and pay towards their mortgage first. So next, let's look at a second client that is in a slightly different situation. So this is a retired couple with an investment property that is a duplex home. Now, we met in the beginning of this year to look at their retirement plan, and the topic of the investment home popped up. For this property, they used to live in one side of the duplex for some years, and then afterwards they have bought another property, so they moved out of it and now they're renting out both sides ever since. One thing that was interesting is the zoning itself is residential and commercial. Now this may or may not help with the sale price, but we have to make sure to bring this up to the realtor in case someone is trying to do a land sampling or something like that. So when we were meeting, here is the situation. The property is 600k-ish in mortgages. It is generating a rent roughly $6,500 per month for the whole thing. It is a relatively old property. They have been owning it for quite some time. So fixes and upgrades are bound to happen probably in the next 5 years. They do own another detached home that they live in currently. And also the kids are renting at the moment and don't own their properties. Now, following our reasons that we listed on why we may want to sell at that time. One of the child used to help with the property management, but is going away for work. So this either requires the client themselves to go manage it themselves, which they don't want to, or they would have to outsource to a property manager, which will cost them anywhere 6 to 10% of their monthly rent. Fixes that will happen will also eat into the existing savings, which will speed up their timeline that they eventually will have to sell this property anyway. Now, another point is that part of the proceeds can be used, if they wish, to help the kids with their own property because they're currently renting. So instead of, renting and paying the mortgage for someone else, it keeps everything internalized inside the family. And finally, it was February of this year when we had this discussion. I told them that it's probably nearing the end of a peak market. So if we are thinking about selling, we may as well try it now, because if we delay any further, I don't think we're going to be able to get whatever price that was being offered at that time. Now, initially they were reluctant to sell because they owned it for many, many years, and also looking at their neighbor, they believed that they could only get at most $2 million on their whole duplex, which after paying off mortgages, paying off taxes, to them, it doesn't seem like it's going to help too much with their retirement and not enough to help their kids as well. But I let them know that at this moment, because they retired already, probably focusing on liquidity and cash flow is more important than trying to hold on to something that is about to cost them a lot more money, and may just be like the first client where they have to move the tenants out and lose on the rental income as well. So I told them to just try it out first on the market and see what kind of price we're gonna get, and if we don't like it, we don't have to sell, just hold on to it for a couple more years. So I set them up with a realtor that I also use myself, and she told me that she set up open house. I don't know how many offers they got, but they definitely sold it within the week, and the offer price was 2.5 million. Now here, I'll be honest, if we start the process a little bit later, maybe 1 or 2 months later, I doubt we will be able to get this price. It will be probably much closer to the 2 mil that they were expecting. And then what comes next is the tax calculation, which is going to be a little bit more complicated than the first client because they had lived in one half of the duplex for some number of years. What they were supposed to do when they moved out was to get an appraisal to see the value of the duplex at that time, so then they know how to calculate the capital gain. Now, they didn't know they were supposed to do it, but they did it anyway, luckily, because they had to refinance the house anyway when they were moving out. So we do have an appraisal report from the bank suggesting the value at the time they moved out. And with that, it is a lot easier to calculate a rough estimated capital gain. We simply had to split everything in half. One half of the duplex have always been rented out. That would be easy. The other half has part living in and part renting out. So sale price minus the appraisal value would actually be your capital gain. So as a result, with the net proceed and a rough estimation of cap gain, that amount should be kept probably in a short-term GIC and wait to pay it in April. The rest, we can first use it to maximize the RSP and TFSA to generate more tax efficiency that way. And then whatever is remaining, part of it will be allocated to help their kids with their own properties, and what's left will be invested to generate a retirement portfolio. So those two were some examples of clients looking at their investment property. We laid out all the rationale and then made an informed decision on selling the property, and we sold it at a pretty good time at a decent price. Now lastly, let's talk about the 3 main takeaways from these two experiences. The first one would be, don't fall in love with your own purchases. Just because it is a good purchase before doesn't mean that it is a good hold right now. Your objective in things like interest rate environment may have changed drastically since you have bought it. Be realistic and objective on what is best to you. For example, like the first client, they're young and they do have the time horizon to keep holding on this property. And they may be able to earn another 100 or 200K on the property if they keep holding it. But at that moment, based on their concern, based on what they want and the situation, it's not serving their objective, and the timing at that time was right because it was a peak market. Sometimes I see clients retiring and they still try their hardest to hold on to their massive real estate portfolio. Most of them are actually costing them cash flow, eating into their savings, but they just keep wanting to hold on to it because they're so scared of missing out the future gain, but they're not realizing that by holding on to it, they're actually hurting themselves in the long run. So always stay objective, and if it's time to let go of something, then let it go. But make sure you lay out everything and make a well-informed decision. Now, second is, no matter what people tell you about the home prices, do additional research yourself. Both the first and the second client ran into this kind of biases. The first one, the realtor quoted them a 900K sale price, which was unrealistic, while the second client focused on the 2 mil sale price that they have been hearing around their neighborhood. So the first client actually lost out on precious time and wasted a lot of potential offers, while the second client, if they hadn't done the research, they would have lost out massively on the end of a FOMO market. Now finally, the last takeaway is, if we are in a heavy seller's market, always list at a lower starting point. One thing to understand is that the value of a home is always fluctuating. It's not a fixed thing, and there's no such person or website able to tell you, yes, your price is going to be exactly this. But the thing is, you cannot lock down a value if there is no demand. So generating conversation on your property, which means generating offers, is far more important than trying to sell at a certain price that you think it is worth or your realtor think it is worth. So for example, the first client, if they started at a lower offer, like the client was thinking 700K something, at that time of the market, it could probably generate multiple bidding going on, and they may be able to even sell closer to the 800K mark. I don't know, but I think it's a lot more likely than trying to start 900K and get no offer. Now, I don't like this blind bidding system, but it is what we're in right now. So in the future, if you're selling your own home and we're in such a hot seller market again, keep it in mind that it's probably much better to list lower to generate demand than to list high and scare everyone away. All right, so that's everything I wanted to share today. Just want to take you through 2 examples of kind of like a planning or discussion process on how to arrive at selling decision and what to do after you have sold your properties. If you like everything I'm saying today, make sure you hit the like button once. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button twice. Next one I want to hear from you is, are you selling your properties right now, or do you know someone that is? and what kind of situation or conversations they are having right now. Let me know in the comment down below. Also, if you like these kind of video, I do upload them 8:30 EST every Tuesday. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell button. So you get all the notifications in the future. Alright, this is Jacky. I hope you found this interesting. I'll see you next week. Bye!